And she's going to show us how to make these chestnut gnocchi. I'm going to say a little bit about the Italian chestnuts, and then I'm going to sit back and sort of enjoy this whole thing. And Laurel might get up occasionally. She's doing prep to get us all ready. So welcome, everybody. And if you have any questions, you could just write them in a message, because I'd asked people to submit questions, but hadn't really heard anything. So Italy cultivates many kinds of chestnuts, and in lots of regions, really, up north where Laurel is, Piedmont, Veneto, Tuscany, but also down south in Campania, and on the, for example, in Tuscany, the Elba Island, and I love those chestnuts that they use in many wonderful ways. And I make a rustic Elban chestnut cake with the chestnut flour. But so some of them are really like IGP and pretty well-known chestnuts. They are used in a multitude of ways, roasted and boiled in polenta. I use them as a stuffing with like game birds and turkey at Thanksgiving, which is around the corner. And then the sweet use would be that sort of like the cake I mentioned before. Castagnaccio is the most commonly known name, which is this chestnut flour cake. And then we all know the wonderful dessert, Monte Bianco, which uses a chestnut puree and whipped cream. But it's also in like marmalades and jams and creams. I make a radicchio ravioli with a chestnut cream. Chestnuts are just plain wonderful. And so, as I mentioned, marron glacé as a topping for ice cream. And the flour is gluten-free. So that's a wonderful added value to it. The harvesting, we're right in the midst of it now, and it's typically from late September to November. And in Italy, they're called castagne or marroni, and which are not always synonymous. So castagne come from the wild tree, whereas marroni are from cultivated and grafted trees.
I did not know that, Wendy.
Yeah, there you go.
Look at you. That's amazing. I always thought they were just interchangeable.
Yeah, and I actually did a lot of research on it because I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I left the States when I was like a little girl, but in this suburb of Pittsburgh, we used to collect these things. They look exactly like chestnuts, and we called them buckeyes, which is like the male deer. It looks like the eye of the male deer. And we collected these. And I was thinking to myself, oh no, all those years there, we just kind of collected them and played with them. We should have been cooking with them, but alas, not at all. They're not edible and for culinary use. And then one of the biggest trees and oldest trees in Italy is a quote unquote chestnut tree. I think it's known as the 100-year-old chestnut tree. It's enormous and gorgeous, but again, that one does not bear the edible chestnuts. So now you see them all over the place. In Rome, just walking through the streets, they sell them in those roast in those cones. Um, I'm going to just do two show and tell things. I have a chestnut roaster that I got in Tuscany in Pienza. Let me grab that. Because it's a big fat baby. But, you put the chestnuts in there and then over the fireplace and you roast your chestnuts. You can kind of shake this and so forth. And then the one I use constantly, I'm grabbing that. And it had a wooden handle. I mean, it really looks beaten up. Why? because it is. It's something that I use constantly. And I'll tell you what, look at the perforations. I rarely use it for chestnuts. I put like red and yellow peppers on there, any kind of a vegetable, eggplant, right on the stove top, and the flame on my gas stove goes right through those holes and does a beautiful job roasting. Um, that's why it's such a beaten up thing because it's so well used. Not so much for chestnuts. And, I pick some up at my local market. I don't want to tilt these too much, but, or they'll fall on the floor. But I have to say, I'm a little bit lazy about chestnuts. I love them, but it's a lot of friggin' work.
I
So
agree.
I buy these ones that deliziose castagne pronte da gustare, like ready to eat. So they have been cooked. They're vacuum packed. You open it up, and I can just plop one in my mouth or throw it in stuffing or whatever. And that's kind of the easy way. But what the heck? They're great. Do you use these, Laura?
I definitely use those. I'm also very lazy when it comes to chestnuts because there's so much work
Oh, and
to
they
cook
hurt your
it, to
hands.
peel,
Yeah.
and so I'm curious to whoever's joining us from the States, if it's easy to find those kind of packaged chestnuts in the States too, because I use them all the time here. They're even in like the refrigerated section, in the vegetable section of my grocery store. And in fact, last night I made a recipe. I make a recipe a lot for the holidays, and I was doing a cooking demo last night for a stuffed quail, like a pancetta wrapped stuffed quail with chestnuts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
and I definitely used those. I'm not wrapping quail with pancetta and cooking the chestnuts.
Exactly. I mean, these babies, you could actually just take them, put a piece of prosciutto, a little piece of
Oh yeah,
prosciutto around, grill them, and they're amazing. Yeah, if somebody is able to get these babies in the States, vacuum packed, already cooked, I'll bet you a dime a dozen that you can because it's a favorite ingredient in stuffings at during the holidays. So I don't think a lot of Americans are
that's
struggling
true.
there with those
Are
things.
messing with the chestnuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Wendy, I had no idea you were such a fan of chestnuts. I'm glad that I had suggested this recipe and you were like, "That's the one," because now I know you have such a wealth of knowledge about chestnuts.
Absolutely. Well, and I saw she's a very active Substacker in Tuscany and has done cooking for years. Uh, Judy Witz Francini.
Yeah,
And I saw that she's featuring in her tomorrow's Substack post, heads up, everyone. It's all about chestnuts.
that's
So
awesome.
I think there are a lot of people out there on that chestnut page. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and tis
they're
the
the best.
season.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not as crazy in but I guess they're okay. Sweet in the marron glacé. I wouldn't say that that's at the top of my pile. I like them more as a savory ingredient.
Well, here's what I've discovered about marron glacé is that it really depends how they're made and who makes them. Because if they're made kind of in an industrial way, at least the ones that I've tried at the supermarket or in more industrial settings, they're cloyingly sweet. They're overly sweet. They don't taste like chestnuts. They just have this kind of pasty consistency, and they're not thrilling at all to the palate. But when you get them like in Milan, there's this place called Giovanni Galli that's a famous like confetteria that makes really great marron glacé. Obviously, they're like worth their weight in gold because the process that it takes to make them is incredibly labor intensive and time intensive, but those are amazing because they have this really, really great consistency and they also really still taste like chestnut, right? They have that meaty, earthy kind of flavor and don't just taste like sugar. But I do agree that sometimes they can be very disappointing.
I mean, I'm wondering if you could use these vacuum packed ones and do a marron glacé. Have you ever tried that?
I don't think so because I think part of the process is like, I don't know because I've never tried to make them. Let's just get that straight. I don't like them
Yeah,
enough to want to go through the entire process to make them.
exactly.
But I think that part of the process is like boiling, like cooking them actually in the sugar. So if they're already cooked, I don't know that if it would have that same
Right,
effect.
right. Yeah, so I guess you'd have to either maybe buy them on a street in a cone already roasted, but it's getting them out of the
Right.
shell that's the real bear. That's
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I see you've got your potatoes in front of you here.
My potatoes are ready. What our what our participants need to know is that I ran in the house and I was panicking because I put my potatoes on to boil and the clock was ticking and they were still hard. And I came out with Wendy and I'm like, Wendy, what am I gonna do? My potatoes aren't ready. You know, it's like substacker crisis. And she's like, put them in the microwave. It's like, I didn't think about that. Of course, put them in the microwave. And now they're ready, but they're, like, atomically hot. They're like I have, like, a little atomic bomb right here. So I'm gonna keep on sort of, like, peeling them and working with them, but basically, you can either make them in the microwave or you can boil them. You wanna use like a russet potato, not a waxy potato, and, you wanna boil them until they're soft or microwave them until they're soft in this case. And then, obviously, the best thing for gnocchi is to have a potato ricer,
Oh, yeah.
but that's okay if you don't have one. You don't need to go out and buy it just for this recipe. You can also just use like a potato masher if you have one, or just a good old fork. It's a little bit more elbow grease, but that works just as well.
Yeah.
Um, so I cut these in half to let them cool off a little bit, and I'm just gonna like kind of skin them and feed them through the ricer while we keep chatting about the wonderful world of chestnuts.
Yeah, so Laurel, I don't know if she said it or not, but the boiling part, the peels are on, peels
Yes.
on.
Yes.
So, when I make gnocchi, I usually so if they're kind of shaped like this, I put a fork in the bottom and then peel it so I don't have to hold them because 'cause they're so darn
Right.
hot. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Gnocchi, but that's the thing about gnocchis. You still want to work with them when they're hot. You don't want them to cool off because then they lose their soft, subtle
yeah,
nature, supple nature, and so it's a kind of a trade off.
yeah,
But
exactly.
but so you make gnocchi a lot. You were saying earlier you love
Yes,
gnocchi. What's your
yeah.
favorite kind of gnocchi?
Um, I like just basic potato gnocchi, like, and even, the gnocco sorrentino from Sorrento, but I like that shape, and, like, ricotta and spinach, gnocchi is a great way to incorporate a green vegetable into a delicious dish and have young people like, you have 2, uh, young kids, I have
Hmm.
grandkids. It's a good way for them to, eat their veggies and I like them too with, like, the spinach and ricotta ones with a gorgonzola sauce.
Oh, yum.
Yeah, I make those, and then I put the sauce and I spread them out with the sauce on a cookie sheet, freeze it, and then when it's frozen, I just break it, and when we wanna have that for lunch, I just grab out a chunk and heat it up, and it's in its sauce and everything.
I just want to get this is just such a fun, satisfying
Oh,
moment.
yeah. I love it. I love it.
And also, by the way, if you do want to invest is a big word. These things aren't that expensive, but if you do want to invest in a potato ricer, it also makes amazing mashed potatoes. It makes the fluffiest, softest. I always make my mashed potatoes if I'm not making them for like 25, because if you're making a huge amount of mashed potatoes, you're not going to want
And
to
you're
put them all
not
through the ricer.
overworking the potato, so it doesn't get starchy.
It doesn't get starchy and sticky. They're fluffy and they stay hot. I mean, it's just I love this little machine. I mean,
And also, for other uses, like if you make passatelli,
yep.
the bolognese thing, well, that's a great little tool. Or to like with, shrimp or something like that, where you've cooked them and you wanna get the remainder of the juice out, you stick them in that potato ricer and swish and that juice comes out. I think it's a great tool to always
You
have.
put shrimp through a potato ricer?
Well, I put the shrimp in, but what comes out is just all the delicious juice.
Wow, I'm learning so much today. I'm going to be ricing my shrimp from now on. But what remains of the shrimp on the inside? Is it like still edible, or are they kind of like a
Oh,
sad
no, but by
carcass?
then, I mean, like, what's left, it's pretty dry, it's just like the shell, and then you
Right.
dump that, but meanwhile, you've got all that great, juice.
Oh, amazing.
So, yeah.
That's great. So, speaking of chestnuts, something that I found out when I was researching for my cookbook, which let me do a little plug. This is the book that this recipe is in, Liguria Cookbook,
Fantastic book.
about the region of Liguria, the Italian Riviera. And what I found out about a lot of recipes while I was cooking Liguria, researching Ligurian recipes, is a lot of their pasta recipes had a version in a lot of the old cookbooks with chestnut flour, like the trofie, or a lot of their recipes in general. And I was like, what is the deal with all this chestnut flour? Why is it always an option? And it turned out it was, once upon a time, it was more common than the wheat version because Liguria is basically mountains that fall into the sea. There's not a lot of fields. There's not a lot of farmland that is, could easily support fields and fields of wheat. There was a lot of trade that came through Genoa, but wheat was for rich people. And in the woods and the mountains, on mountainsides, on the hillside, there were abundant chestnut trees. So really, the flour staple in inland Liguria was more chestnuts than it was wheat for a very long time. So that's where sort of this recipe comes from, and a lot of the other pasta recipes that have a chestnut variation.
Yeah.
Just sort of comes out of the cucina polvere.
Yeah, exactly, and, I think that's why chestnuts are such a big thing in Tuscany, and I think that's
Yep.
why, the, uh, cakes like the castagnaccio and the Alban, chestnut cake came into being because, again, like Elba, just falls into the sea. It's the island and it's mountains, but there's these wonderful chestnut trees all over. Yeah, it's pretty magnificent.
They're also beautiful trees.
They are. Yeah,
Yeah, big,
yeah,
beautiful, magnificent trees. So
yeah.
there we go. So what I have here is a little less than a kilo, so about 2 pounds of potatoes that I'm working with, and this is going to be for 4 very hungry or 6 moderately hungry people. this recipe. But I found that gnocchi really fill you up in general because it's a very
Oh,
high,
yeah.
and especially with the chestnut flour as an addition, because already potatoes are filling and chestnuts are also very filling.
It's a very cuddly, comforting winter dish as well.
Absolutely. I wish you could just the on the other side of the screen. I wish you guys could smell this chestnut flour because it smells
Mm.
smoky and earthy. It has just an incredible aroma that, that already, like, even if you just dress these with butter and Parmigiano, it's like you already won. You
Yeah.
already won dinner. Um, no, it's very commonly dressed with pesto, this recipe. And
Oh,
it's funny, a
interesting.
lot of people think, "Oh,
Interesting.
here, chestnuts and pesto," but it's actually a really, really great pairing. The pesto pairs beautifully with it, so definitely try that.
Pesto, Genovese, of course, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, basil pesto.
Yeah, for where you are, that makes, like, perfect sense. Yeah,
Okay, so now I have my beautiful big bowl of riced potatoes.
yummy.
I'm gonna add a little bit of salt. I know I've cut my head off here, but it's hard to get the
That's
right
okay, that's
angle where you can see
okay.
everything, and I can say I'm not used to cooking sitting down. It's kind of
Oh, I know, yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, so we're gonna pour in the chestnut flour. You guys see that okay? Okay.
And as you were telling me before, Laura, we were sort of, like, comparing, some gnocchi recipes before we went online. So Laurel doesn't put egg in hers.
No, I don't put egg. This is a very traditional recipe. And coming out of the cucina povera, if you don't need an egg, you don't use it. And the chestnut flour is has that kind of structure to it that it doesn't really need the egg. What I do though is use a little bit of wheat flour. Just plain old all-purpose to kind of help everything to come together. But
Yeah, makes that
gluten
gluten.
free, you can
Yeah,
omit it. I've found that with it, the 100% chestnut flour, it's a little more crumbly. And I do add a couple tablespoons of olive oil at this point
of course.
because, Italy.
Right.
And the aroma is just amazing. So it's going to look a little bit crumbly at first, but don't worry. I promise it'll come together. You want to just keep moving with it. If you have a bench scraper, that is the best. I unfortunately left my bench scraper at some event, and I haven't rebought it yet. And so I'm an orphan of my bench scraper. It's very sad.
Yeah.
So once it starts coming together, you can sort of just toss it down on the surface and move it around with the bench scraper because it is very sticky. You'll get all over your hands, but that's okay too. Um, and the point is to work it until it just comes together, but not overwork it. You don't want your gnocchi to get tough.
Yeah, potatoes start to get starchy, like, very
Yeah.
fast and easily, yeah.
Mhm. Okay. But the smell is just incredible. I swear I could eat this raw.
Let us have a look at the dough now, Laurel, just to get a yeah, so it's starting to
Yeah. It's starting to come together. I want to be real careful not to overwork it because then I'm also going to work it into little logs, right? And that's you're kind of kneading it more once it's in little logs. And so you just want to make sure that all the ingredients get mixed together well. They all get moistened by the potatoes. This is actually looking pretty good.
so you said before that you don't it's not traditional to do so, but that you don't put an egg in it, and you don't like the consistency when there is an egg in it. What is it about the consistency that you don't like?
I feel like it makes them a little more spongy. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
And they
yeah.
get more, like, a little fluffier, like, I just really love the sort of, like, meaty consistency that these have with just the chestnut flour.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, does the traditional, like, cucina povera recipe have, uh, double O flour in it, or would it
So,
just be
it depends how far back you go. I mean,
yeah,
traditional is a big word. It depends how far back you go. Once double O flour was, readily available, yes,
yeah,
they started putting it in there, um, even without the egg. It's
right,
more it's you can find that one, you can find the other one.
yeah,
Um, so what I'm doing here is like a little test round to see if I needed it enough. I'm kind of like rolling it out into a log. If at this point it completely falls apart still, you might want to sprinkle a little bit of water, add a little bit more oil if it's just way too crumbly, or just try kneading it with your hands a little bit more. So the trick is find that sweet spot where it holds itself together,
yeah,
but you're not overworking it.
exactly.
So this is looking pretty good. But I think I need to do a couple more needs. But then also once you even if the so another thing that I do, another lazy trick. I feel like this is Laurel's lazy cooking class, like how to cut all the
Hey,
corners. Um, so, I'm a mom, I have young kids, I've got weeknights. I'm not making gnocchi on weeknights most of the time anyway. But when I am, I usually cut the corner of the fork tines on the gnocchi. I found that they are just as good, maybe not as pretty, but just as delicious if you just cut them into little squares, right?
oh,
Like
completely. Oh,
100%.
yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. So you
So
never, like, run them over the gnocchi board. It's a lot of extra time, let's face it.
it's a lot of extra time. I mean, it is sort of meditative, and that's really lovely, but, if
Yeah,
you've got the time. If you don't, you make your little logs, you cut some little gnocchi like this. I don't know if you guys can see that. You have some
yeah.
beautiful little chunks right here. You throw them in the pot of boiling water, and you're golden. I mean, you really don't have to.
So how thin do you roll out that snake?
I mean, it's
So
again, this doesn't have egg in it, so it's a little bit less forgiving as a dough. It's got a little bit less of those like proteins like build all together. So as thin as you can and without it kind of falling apart. But they're really like again, these aren't going to grow because they don't have the egg in them. So the gnocchi, when you put the egg in them, they grow in the water and they puff up. These aren't going to grow. So it's just like whatever size you want to have in your plate. You don't want them to be tiny. You don't want it to look like kibble. But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
also don't, you also want it to be so big that you have these big chunks in your mouth. So I would say, like this size, you know, like that.
Yeah, kind of.
So yeah, then you just kind of like boil a big pot of salted water and you throw them in. And then, like with most gnocchi, is a few seconds after they float to the top, you skim them off the top. Butter and Parmesan is amazing.
A little bit of sage. Yeah,
Some
sage.
sage in there. So what I like to do is fry the sage leaves in oil or in the butter so that they get all crunchy, and then put them on top as a garnish. Or also pesto, just like make a fresh pesto and try it with these. Are so good. I had it the first time at this beautiful restaurant in Liguria called La Brinca, which is this sort of temple for traditional Ligurian cuisine. They research old, forgotten recipes and bring them back to life. And they make
Nice.
their own pesto for their entire restaurant with a mortar and pestle, which nobody does anymore. Um,
Do you?
I mean, I don't have a restaurant. I mean, I do. I will do it for up to 8 people. I will not do it for like 100 people a night. No. That's insane, but they do, and so it's just the kind of care they take in their cooking. And so I first tried this recipe at their restaurant, and they were generous enough to share it with me, at least a version of it. Not sure if it's their official version, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so that's the recipe. It's stupidly simple. As long as you get your potato cooked in time, there's there's no stress
Right,
involved.
right, right.
Um, it's so far I still have I'm gonna work on it tomorrow. I still have to take a nice picture because it hasn't been photogenic for me because, it's kind of like, the brown gnocchi in the plate with the green sauce on top. I haven't made it work for me photographically yet, but I'm sure there's gonna be a way. So
Yeah, some of
if
the
it
best dishes don't really lend themselves to
they're not
great
photogenic,
photograph.
right?
But I
So
suppose, you know, the sage leaves could help as a
sage uses
decor.
help. Yeah, if anybody has some brilliant plating ideas, please write it to us in the chat or on the comments. I will be posting this recipe. It's in the cookbook, like I said before, Liguria the cookbook. But I will be publishing it also on my Substack newsletter next week. So if you guys
Oh,
are
good,
reading
good,
it,
good,
yeah,
good. Yeah, and the cookbook Liguria, it really is fantastic. The recipes are great, and there's like a lot of Laurel's family stories with like her mother-in-law and the whole extended family. And her husband is a photographer for the book, and the photography I think is exquisite.
thank you. I'll tell him you said that.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I've told him that. I mean, he's really quite amazing.
He's in the other room holding the door closed so the children don't run in and interrupt our live stream. But I'll tell him you said that. Thank you. Well, it is sort of a love letter from both of us to this region. That's the region he was born, where his family is from, and where he grew up. And so through his lens, his photographic lens, I think he really tried to tell the story of the love he has for that region. And as I did through the stories and the recipes, so I think that I hope that's what comes through in the book is just sort of the love and respect we have for this region, and the
Yeah,
delight that I had in discovering more and more about it, more stories about it, the people that make it what it is, the producers, the winemakers, the farmers, the chefs. So hopefully that's what comes through in the end because
yeah.
there's
It
love
definitely
everything.
does. Now, was your mother-in-law and the aunts and were they thrilled with the cookbook?
I think so. Yeah, they were all really sweet. Of course, it's all in English, and so they didn't really get to read. But I did translate. So there's one of the chapters in the beginning of the book. My hands are covered in gnocchi, but this is my kind of destroyed version anyway. So there's a chapter in the beginning of the book where I talk about them, and
Yeah, I
tell their
remember.
story. And there's pictures of them. Obviously, I asked their permission, but oh, here it is. Here's some pictures of them growing up
Oh,
in Liguria.
nice.
So
Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
I
That's a
I
great
asked their
tip.
permission for that, and I also translated the chapters. This is the chapter Le Nonne, the grandmothers. This is a chapter about them and about how the three of them have very distinct cooking styles, and then there's different recipes of all three of them are in the book, and so I translated that for them in the introduction so they could read it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and you learned a lot from them, if
oh
I
yeah.
recall. Yeah,
So
yeah,
people often ask me like why Liguria? I live in Milan. We've lived in Milan now for 20 years. But Liguria being the home of Emilio, where he grew up, it was always sort of felt like home to me too. I mean, when we would come here, every weekend after we moved here, every weekend we'd go down to Genoa, where all his friends were. We would spend all our summers in Moneglia on the coast, and that is really where I learned to cook. Because when we were in Milan, we were just a young couple going out all the time. I was in university. Cooking was not on my mind. Um, but when we would go down to the coast, we would be in the villa with his mother and his aunts, and a lot of the cousins would always go to the beach and hang out on the beach all day. I don't have this skin to sit in the sun all day. I get
yeah,
burned. I
yeah,
would get
yeah,
bored. So I would go back up to the house and hang out with the nonnas in the kitchen. And I learned so much. I was incredibly intimidated by them at first, of course. But then I just started learning. I just started, first acting as their
yeah,
sous chef and dishwasher, but then the more I asked, the more excited they were and are still today to share secrets and recipes with me. And so it's really been
yeah, yeah.
a beautiful relationship.
Nice. So, Laura, you're fairly new to Substack,
Yeah,
and I think you're enjoying that. But are you working on another cookbook?
I am working on another cookbook. Actually, I have a couple proposals out there, and so I can't until I sign on one of them. I can't really share much about the details of them, but I have more ideas than I have time to develop them.
I know. I hear you. I hear
But
you.
I love doing cookbooks. Like, if I could just stop everything else and just write cookbooks, every day, all day, I would do that. Um, because I love diving in. I love testing recipes. I love writing recipes, but more than that, I really love the stories behind food, and
Yeah.
the emotions that those create. And I was listening to a podcast with Samin Nosrat the other day. She has a new cookbook out, and she was saying something about how, like, in the end, there's only really 3 recipes in the world, and they just get a little bit changed around. The ingredients are a little bit different, but there's really only 3. And I think about that when I write these books and look at these recipes and how similar the stories are too, really. There's really
Yeah.
only 3 stories in the world too, but this thing about, um how much we love food and how much we share joy through food and show love through our food through generations. How that just gets passed down through generations and cross culturally. I mean, I grew up in Texas, and here I am, like, crying over chestnut gnocchi. It reminds me of somebody else's memory. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what really gets me going, and that's what really I love about the Substack community too, is that it's a space to tell those stories where people will actually read them and share them and be excited about them, and there's other people writing them, and I
Yeah.
I just feel like I've been craving that for a long time, because I started out as, like, an old school food blogger, right? When people actually read blogs and would comment, and it
Right.
was a kind of
Right.
different landscape. And I think that social media was feeling a little bit, tight and a little bit constraining in terms of, the kind of stories and the kind of formats that you can get attention, I guess.
Yeah, so Substack's kind of a nice, format in that sense. It's got its pros and cons, but even things, these live events, and they're pretty good about generating, um, little clips and stuff afterwards. So, yeah, it's a good platform, let's say. So, any other thoughts on the, gnocchi before we let people get off and pull out their chestnut flour and get going?
Right? Unless anybody has any questions, or if you think of a question after, don't be afraid to reach out and ask me directly. And if you make it please send me a photo or just tell me you made it and that you liked it or you didn't. Either way. And yeah, if you want the full recipe, it'll probably come out on Wednesday of next week.
Yeah, good. And yeah, if anybody does give it a whirl, post a photograph in the notes.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd love to see the
Love to see
how
it.
they come out because we were talking. I don't know if that was while we were live or if it was before. I think it was while we were live. Is that this dish isn't doesn't lend itself to a great photograph. So anyone that comes up with a great plating for these gnocchi, have at it and share.
Yeah. Yeah. You win. Because I haven't done it yet.
Okay, so well, this is faster than I thought, but unless anyone has a comment, and I don't see any messages there, we'll let you go and get on with your evening. Thanks, Laurel, for doing
Thank
this.
you. And thank you everybody for signing on and joining us. This has been really fun.
Yeah, it has. Thanks.